So I'm like, Riverside is so weird because like it allows you to do live streaming and whatnot, but like LinkedIn is kind of finicky about it
Mm,
because like LinkedIn's live thing
yeah.
like, is is not great. So this is like my second go around doing this over there on LinkedIn. So but I like the live. I don't know. Like I like how people can see it happening as it's going on. It
Yeah.
was I did it last week and it was a lot of fun. And I had some people responding, so that was really cool. Like as it was happening, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's working, as far as
That is
like
awesome.
so I made this event probably a little too late, but that's okay. Like we're
Eh,
this will still people will still be able to see this after the fact, and it's just
It's all
nice
good.
to yeah, well thanks for doing this cuz I knew you were like okay, I got to take the band-aid off doing something like
I
this.
totally do. I'm much a better writer because it gives me time to think
Yeah.
and then to process my thought and then to organize my thought and I write it. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to say.
Yeah.
Versus who knows what I'm going to say. I might be all over the place. You might see ADHD in in force.
See,
You will see it probably.
I no, like I will say probably but only because like I'm that way, but I'm just like whatever. We're just talking, like
Yeah, yeah.
like like it's the way I see it like the whole real thing, like I've heard the word authentic way too much in my career and also just like in
Mhm.
everyday like LinkedIn life that I'm kind of allergic to it now. Like I try to find any other word uh to use than that. But yeah, but essentially like the way I just kind of like want to move forward just like in life in general is that way. So,
Yeah, be real, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you don't think before you act, but at the same time, don't overthink it, right? I mean, that's so much
yeah.
of solopreneur or entrepreneur in general is just, hey, you take some calculated risk, but just take the risk, take the action, and then try to learn from it, right? There's always going to be data that comes out. It could be spectacular failure, that's still a data. It could be, unimaginable success. Great. But you won't know until you take that steps, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's relevant. I mean, we've talked. This is. we, uh, this isn't the first time we've talked. So
So,
who knows how much we'll get into like personal stuff. But I do think risk is a big part of like our stories and everyone else's stories. It seems like
mhm,
right now, um, because like more and more people getting laid off, more and more people are like, wait a
yeah.
second, this, 9 to 5, not even corporate, but just like the 9 to 5 thing isn't for
Mhm.
me anymore. And I think a lot of people are learning in real time. Um,
Yeah.
just the risk of even trying to have a 9 to 5, that's a risk in itself. So,
Yeah.
so
More and
we're
more
in it.
so these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wonder if she'll see this, but I saw a post of an acquaintance, someone I've talked to before, but um, it lives in Utah where I'm from, and we've talked about like I've tried to get a job where she's worked before, and she's not she had just gotten laid off, and she's just
Oh,
had a post about like how it's the hardest time in her job seeking um career, I guess,
yeah. Yeah.
that she's had to. So I can see like the puzzle pieces of like where I've been maybe like 3 or 4 years ago,
Mhm.
as far as the realization of things. So
No, yeah.
I don't know.
It's just gotten harder, I think. I mean, I remember so when I got laid off in 2023, wasn't the first time I got laid off, but it was the time where it looked so different that I decided just to take a different route. And, I mean, we can talk about the story later on as well if you really want to kind of dive into it. But
Yeah.
what I remember distinctly talking to other people is people who've been working much longer than I have, who've been through the boom and then the bust in the early 2000s, right? The
Uh-huh.
internet boom and the internet bust, and then the 2008 market crash from the whole mortgage debacle,
Yeah.
they say that they lived through that and they say this is the hardest they've ever felt in just looking for a job, not to continue their career. So it's fundamentally different. And I don't know if we're ever going back to the way it used to be. I mean,
Yeah.
who's to say that it won't become a better situation? Like you have to get a lot worse before you get better. Like I'll be very, very happy if that's the case. I'm hopeful that it will be, but
Yeah.
we don't know. We just
Yeah.
don't know. It's
Yeah.
different.
No, no, totally. So for folks who don't know who you are, because I know who you are, but like for folks who
Yeah.
don't know who you are, so like I know we just kind of like went into it, but as far as my job as a host, I got a host, right? So yeah, who are you? What do you do? Yeah, what's the story?
Uh, let's start from where I am today, and then we can work backwards because
Sure.
I think a lot of my history shape who I am today. So kind of want to give a little bit more context around that. So today I am a solopreneur. I've been at it for 18, 19 months or so now. Um, my goal is to help other solopreneurs, women especially, women solopreneurs, with the finance piece of things. Because I find that talking to so many solopreneurs, there is a lot of people, well, there's many ways people got into solopreneurship, right? But people got into solopreneurship because they have a skill sets that people will pay money for. They have, products that people want to pay money for, and that's what they're good at. But when you run a business, there's also the finance side of things, and it gets really complicated really fast, especially if you start growing your business and revenue gets, ahead of those kinds of things. So my goal is to help solopreneurs um, manage and also navigate that piece of it, whether it's personal finance piece or is
Hmm.
more the solopreneur business finance piece as well. So I am in the process of getting my CFP, so Certified Financial Planner. That because what I realized when I first started this journey is that there's a lot of things that I still don't know. Even
Hmm.
though I know a lot about personal finance, there are things that I absolutely do not know. So if when you know what you don't know, you try to go fill that gap, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Hmm.
Getting my CFP certification will allow me to help other people in ways that I couldn't before I started this journey. So that's what I'm doing. As for how I got here, though, like I
Yeah.
said, I got laid off in 2023. Before that, I built a career in analytics. I worked my way up from data analyst to being a manager, and then being a director, managing a department, and all those kinds of things. And I love many aspects of that, but at some point, I think when the pandemic hit, I started questioning if there is all there is to life. You
Yeah.
know, like, I've gotten good at climbing the corporate ladder. I've gotten good at what I was doing. But at some point you go, wait, so I've been doing this for 20 years. This is really all there is to it. So pandemic's when I started thinking about possibly doing something else, even though I didn't really take any actions. I
Hmm.
didn't really take any steps to discovering what it is that I want next. I just, like it was comfortable, right? Being in corporate, you have, exactly what you're doing, you're learning new things all the time as well, but you always building somebody else's dreams, right?
Yeah.
It didn't really bother me at first, but eventually it started bothering me. So when the pandemic happened, and then going through surviving several rounds of layoffs, and then finally actually got laid off myself, I
Hmm.
realized that it is actually a blessing in disguise. It did not, I mean, it came pretty relatively quickly just because I've already been thinking about it, but
Yeah.
it was still hard when you get laid off. You go, wait, so who am I again? you
Yeah.
know, you're
Hmm.
20 years, you kind of have this like, oh, when you go networking event, what do you do? You have this spiel about what you do, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, I am unemployed. So like you sort of
Yeah.
have to kind of find your identity from there. So it wasn't the first time I got laid off. I got laid off before. It
Hmm.
was just this time is different, both because the environment is different, but also I'm in my point in my life where I felt like I put 20 years in analytics career. I loved it. I loved the people. I didn't always love what I was doing, or I didn't always love the project I was on, maybe. But overall, it was a good career. But then you just kind of start wondering, is there something else to that? So.
Yeah, like I think the identity piece is like so huge. I don't know if like a lot of people like are very cognizant of if that's what's happening. Um, because like kind of like I was talking about that post I just saw, like it felt like a real struggle, like grappling with like
Hmm.
this used to be so easy. This yada yada. Like I've done this, I've done that. Like, but what now?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think you were. It's not so much like, oh, you were smart to like think in those terms of like maybe going out off on your own, because like who like everyone, I feel like everyone during the pandemic had their own version
Yes.
of like, is this all there is? Like, to me, you hear about like divorces happening, people leaving jobs, living in vans.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
a mass like identity shift,
Hmm.
at least like in Western culture, but especially
Yes.
American culture. But like it's yeah, like and you kind of had like a head start, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I did have a hard start in the sense of I thought about it, but I never really
yeah,
did anything about it until I was pushed out the door, right? Like, okay, voila, you don't have to go to work now. What do you do? And that's when I start actually thinking more specific about it instead
hmm
of just like, I don't know, maybe if it's not this, then maybe it's that. And like versus picking a lane and say, I want to do this thing because it's meaningful to me.
yeah. Did you have any like history of at least like maybe in your family or people around you growing up like starting their own businesses, or did you have any like frame of reference at all?
I do. So funnily enough, my dad pivoted his career and voluntarily. He became a businessman probably in his 40s.
Hmm
And it was he chose to do that because he knew that um that was the way that he could best support his family. I mean, I'm one of four kids, and supporting us to go to college and those kinds of things. Asian family, they always, there's no doubt that you're going to college no matter what, and I'm going to support
Yeah.
you. And that was sort of the burden they carry with them. So he knew that building a business is the way to go to do that, to make sure that he supports his children going to college and grad school and whatnot. So the ironic part is, even though he was a businessman, he never actually really told us about his mindset, right?
hmm
Like growing up, I just saw him as like he works really hard. And he talks about sometimes like, oh, the struggles he had with customers and whatnot, but he never really talked much about like what does it take to become a businessman? What
hmm
does it take to actually strike out on your own? What are some of the challenges that you get beyond just, yeah, the customer is difficult, but like all the pressure that comes with it, all the financial aspect that comes with it. There's just like he never talked about that. In fact, he never encouraged us to take that route. Never.
Yeah.
So yes, I have people in my life that lived through that, but I never learned anything from him about solopreneur or entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah. And when high school and in college, right? Like
Hmm.
there's probably no thought of doing that for yourself at all.
No, no, it was never something that we talked about at home. If anything, they talk about go to school, get good grades, go to good college, maybe get a scholarship, and then like go to grad school, and then get a good job, and work your way up, get promoted. That's more the script that I had growing up.
Yeah. So did you grow up in Northern California, like Bay Area?
No, I did not. I actually was actually born and raised in Malaysia, and I came here when I was
Okay.
12. Actually learned English when I was 12, which is a challenge in of itself. And I feel that having that challenge and difficulties, fitting in, especially when you're 12, you just want to fit in. You don't want
Yeah,
to be different. You
that's
want,
a weird age.
y- yeah. So I mean, learn English at the same time as like trying to fit in, trying to figure out what the culture is like, how to make friends and all that stuff in a different culture was pretty traumatic, I would say. But at the
Hmm
same time, I look back on that experience quite a bit and say, hey, if I made it then, like things are easier, so much easier now than it was back then. Like, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, it wasn't like life or death. It wasn't like I was struggling on the street. Like that would have been like real struggle. But think of it as a 12-year-old. Like all you want to do is just fit in. Like you don't want to be this like sore thumb, sticking out or anything like that.
hmm
So that was hard. It was a really difficult period of my life, but I overcame that, and became successful, relatively speaking. Despite all the hardship and whatnot. And I do reflect back on that a lot. especially, being solopreneurs now, there are times where you're just like, oh my God, I'm not getting anywhere. In fact, I just took one step forward and 5 steps back. Like,
Yeah.
am I cut out for this? Right. But then
Yeah.
you think back, you go, you know what? I struggled through more difficult periods of my life and I made it. So
Yeah.
I have,
Like
I have, I have to have confidence that I will make it to this time.
yeah. No, I mean, you got well, you got the inside scoop on something I'm working on, so I think about that all the
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
As far as like the hard things, like you're kind of looking back
Yeah.
on, like, okay, if I did that, then I can do this. But the
Hmm.
but the reason why I asked, because like with the like about the Northern California, like maybe like Bay Area, because you're up there now, right?
Yeah. I'm in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's still very much like .com boom San Francisco, and then like I have to watch myself because we have a thing here in Utah called Silicon Slopes, but Silicon Valley, I have to like make sure I got the names right. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Silicon Valley, like all that stuff, and you're there right now. So it made me like wonder, like as like you got out of college and into your data world, and like what was your thought of that whole culture then and now? Like,
You know, I loved it.
mm,
So I have always have that rebellion side of me, right? I've always like I always tell people that I'm to some extent now still motivated by, oh yeah, you don't think I can do it? I'm going to
I
show
love
you
that.
how. Like
I'm
I
there
have
too.
that energy in me.
Yeah,
I kind of fit in, quite a bit with
yeah.
that culture here. It's just like, hey, start something, and then and I think it's I'm also shaped by the fact that I joined a lot of startups during my career,
Hmm.
and you get embedded in that, like, hey, the can-do attitude of like, I thought of something, I'm just gonna, like run it by a couple people and say, hey, this is a good idea, let's build it, right? It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if it, results in anything. That's not how the startup mentality. So I do feel like I fit in,
Hmm.
but I will say though, and I don't know if everybody agrees, I do have to say that the startup cultures in the 2000s is very different now than the startup culture here. I feel like
Mm,
there's a lot more like the entrepreneurial spirit is for everybody back then versus
yeah.
now it feels like only big money wins. You probably ask 5 different people, five people have different opinions, but that's how I feel about what's happening now. Start is becoming more corporate for whatever reason, if that makes sense at all, that
No, it
it's just
does.
more structured now, it feels like. I don't know.
I mean, like you hear about the typical stories of like Bezos and Musk, like, oh, like Bezos got started out of his garage, only selling books. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm too close to things, but like I feel
Hmm.
like I'm pretty perceptive. So you tell me if you see something different. But as far as like the new players, I guess like you don't hear about those origin stories very much at all. It
Yeah.
seems like.
Yeah.
Um, I mean,
It's all
like a
about
lot of
how
these
how
guys that don't.
quickly can you make money, you know?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really like any of those guys. I don't really like any of but like I don't hear about Sam Altman's story, and I just hear about the stuff he's doing now. And it's just like
Hmm.
I just feel like if you're around back then in the early aughts, mid late aughts, like you hear these stories about Bezos before like the AI thing took over, like you
Yes.
could probably be like, Okay, yeah, that's aspirational
Yeah. You
in
can
that
you, you
world
can you can
specifically.
almost feel like, hey, maybe I can do that too. You
Yeah.
have that attitude of like, I can relate. That origin stories is always, always makes you feel like you can relate, even if you cannot really relate. But the story
Hmm.
itself kind of feels familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't exist as much anymore.
Yeah. So as far as like what I was talking about, like looking up to people, even though like you weren't like you probably had like a can do entrepreneurial spirit, but you weren't really an entrepreneur. But now that you're here, is there anyone that you do like look up to? Like, not necessarily in that world, because it feels like I said, like the heroes are kind of they're not really around. So I don't know,
Yeah.
like who do you look up to? Like it doesn't even have to be like business. Maybe they like embody something to you.
I actually find a lot of comfort and encouragement from people who are also building at the same time. Like people
Yeah.
like you, I think that's why I always enjoy talking to you. The other people that I jump on a call with, even if it's strangers, it becomes familiar after a while because I think we all struggle the same but differently, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
We have similar struggles, but we may approach it differently. We might have different kind of struggles around that same problem. And just hearing perspectives from other people really helped me. And I hate to say this, but I really do believe it's true. Misery loves company. And when everybody's in the same boat, it feels like, okay, I'm not all alone, struggling with this problem. So there is there's hope. And like it's just a little bit, even the sliver of hope sometimes makes allows you to kind of bridge that gap to kind of get to the other place, right? And I
Mhm.
feel like that is what I find myself surrounding myself to be inspired. When other people do well, I'm like, oh wow, they did really well. I want to know, how they did it, and just jump on a call, have a conversation. Sometimes it sparks ideas. Sometimes it's just a great conversation. So I find that is more relevant to me now. And I don't know if that has always been the case. I
Mhm.
wasn't an entrepreneur until now.
Yeah.
Um, but I find that the community that I've built and surround myself in has really helped me to become better solopreneur.
Yeah. Because I definitely have other people that I grew up kind of like idolizing as far as like how they went about their whatever they were doing, whatever it be
Mhm.
like an artist or band or whatever else. But like one thing that's really lonely is like doing what we're doing.
Yeah, it is. It
and
is.
like there's not like at least in my city, like it's definitely like it's separated from the tech stuff that's happening just like an hour away from me. And so there are definitely like salt of the earth, more like artists y type of entrepreneurs up here. So like it's a little different than what I'm doing, but I've found at least like on the LinkedIn world where I found, of course, like LinkedIn gets a lot of shit for absolutely correct
Mhm.
reasons, but like the my general philosophy as far as like entering a social situation, I
Mhm.
guess, is that you like if you try, you will end up finding your
Yeah,
people.
totally. Totally.
Yeah, like I mean, you might have to hide some weirdos along the way, but like people that end up in your feed or whatever. But like oh gosh, I like the toxic positivity, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Um,
yes.
but
Toxic positivity on one hand, toxic negativity. I mean, I
yeah,
was just commenting on somebody's post earlier about how the only people who says, "Oh, if only I can go viral, I would have made it." I've never gone viral before because if you've gone viral, you know that the trolls come out and
it's bad.
it's bad. Like that's what I meant by toxic negativity. Like it's really toxic. It's really negative, and like I don't want that.
Yeah,
So like that, those are the kinds of people you don't want to talk to, or you don't want to be associated with, because it doesn't bring anything, positive to your life, so or your business for that matter.
yeah. No, I really enjoy getting to know people, and like I figure I've always loved like the talk show TV type of thing, like growing up.
Hmm.
And I just love this sort of way to get to know people. Like, of course, in the DMs too, I say hello to everybody that I can that connects. And
Yeah.
then some people just rather not, but like sometimes cool things happen. You get on calls, you
Yeah.
have coffee and you share stories, and who knows,
Yep.
there might be someone that you trade business or whatever else. Like,
Hmm.
it's the way it should go as far as like
Yeah.
doing business with good people, or even just not even doing business, just chatting with good people. So
Yeah.
that's what I've appreciated as well, because I've yet to find my thing locally. Something I want to do for sure.
Hmm.
Even if it's just like meeting up with like 4 or 5 people once a month and just having breakfast and not like no one's pitching, no one,
Yeah.
it's just like I think that's something that'd be good for everyone that's kind of like in our boats, so to speak. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as okay, finance, because you said that you're doing data, which of course, like finances and data, very much, there's not a stretch there at all.
Crossover. If you think of
Yeah.
circles, they do cross over a little. They overlap
Yeah.
a little. But
But what was it for you? Like when so you got laid off the last final hopefully time. Um like hopefully you make crap ton of money from here on out and you don't have to do that anymore. But what was the light bulb like, okay, personal finance? Like, were you always interested in it? Like, even like, so even though you
yeah.
might not have had like the business aspect growing up, but were you always interested in money as a kid? Like, what was it?
Yeah. I won't say I was always interested in money. I became more invested in knowing understanding money when I was a graduate student. I get paid $14,000 back then. I still can quote. I mean, I probably still have the paycheck somewhere, but it's like every month, it's like you barely scraping by,
Yeah.
and rent goes to, it takes up so much of it. And I was still determined to live a good life. I mean, good life for a graduate student. And that's when I got interested in the psychology of money. And the reason for that is because I wanted to understand how I can live with so little and live well,
Mm,
right? I have this like need of like, oh gosh, I don't want to suffer as a graduate student. I know I don't have a lot, but like, how can I do more? And it's a lot of trial and error. But then eventually, what I realized is it's a lot of it is mindset. It's a lot of it is about understanding psychology, just human psychology in general. Like for example, there's a lot of psychology in marketing, right? Buy one get one
mhm,
free. Do you really need two of them, right? Well, actually, no, buy one get free. So, like, let's say buy three get two free or whatnot. I'm like, do you really need five things? Like, do you really need to buy three of them just to get so you can score two of them for free?
mhm,
There's a lot of those kinds of things that I learned. Don't react immediately. Think it through, and then so I started coming up with a set of rules for myself, whatnot, and then so it wasn't so much that I learned about psychology. I was just became interested in psychology because I want to understand how I can have better relationship with the little money that I do have.
mhm,
Um, and that sort of started my journey of personal finance, right? And then eventually after grad school, I got a job and get paid a little bit more, and it sort of continued that aspect of okay, so now I have a little bit more money, and what else can I do with the money? So I learned about investments, I learned about retirement savings, I learned about eventually emergency funds, like just a lot of
yeah,
things. So as I gotten better and better at both saving money and as well as spending money meaningfully, um, I, I have friends that basically ask me, "Hey, what's up?"
mhm,
We kind of sit around and say, "Okay, I know approximately how much you make, but like, how do you make the most of your money?" Because I would travel. This is my seven continent wall. I like to say, it's an
oh,
artifact
okay,
that I collected from my travel to all seven continents. And people were just amazed at what I was able to do with the money. And so I started ditching out advice, like, oh, well, you might want to think about this. And oh, there's some tax savings. If you put the money into this retirement, account, you can do this. This
mhm,
is like dating back 10, 15 years ago. So I became that, hey, if I want to go somewhere, I go ask Ceres because she's probably been there because I travel so much. But I also became the person that, hey, if you have finance questions, come to Ceres. So I became that person.
yeah,
So when I got laid off, I would still, dish out advice. And then there was a friend of mine that said, you have good advice. You might want to think about possibly charging people for this. And I go, what? Nobody, I mean, these kind of information I'm giving you is like, it's damn it doesn't, it's out there. It's not like
yeah,
proprietary or anything like that. But what she said was, it might not be proprietary, but the way you package it and the way you explain it makes sense to people, and people will pay for that.
yeah,
So that's kind of how I started my journey of becoming a financial coach, in 2025, and then eventually pivoting to what I'm doing now, which is to help particular group of people, solopreneur, who are women with
mhm.
that finance, whether it's personal finance piece or the business finance piece.
Yeah, you said a phrase, and I don't know, like if if you think about this phrase a lot, but the idea of spending money meaningfully, is that like a thing for you that you like kind of
Mhm.
think about like consciously as you
Yes.
are? Okay, so when you sit down with people, like what sort of things that you ask to kind of pinpoint like what, because I'm a big meaning guy,
Mhm.
so like spending money meaningfully, like I've definitely had those thoughts myself recently,
Mhm.
because like as I'm trying to figure things out, like there's certain things I would love to do or like to do, right? So like what sort of things are you trying to help people as far as like spending money meaningfully? What does that mean to you?
Spending money means meaningfully, meaning spending money that's aligned with your value because your values are meaningful to you. So if you spend money to enhance the value, then it becomes meaningful, right? So
Mhm,
that's one aspect of it. So, like for example, one of what I love about travel, and one of the reasons I became really attached to travel was because I have this adventurous part of me. Like I want to explore new things, I want to learn new things, I want to talk to people I never talked to, I want to eat the food, I want to experience it all, right? For me, experience is such a big part of it.
mhm,
And that's why for me, I don't really spend much on anything else, right? I mean, I'll go out with friends, have, a meal or two every so often or whatnot, but like I'm not a big eat out person. I cook most of my meals if I can. I'm not one of those people that go to concerts or, like none of that stuff. I mean, I do go to concert, I do enjoy it, but that's not the main thing.
yeah,
All my money is spent on traveling, and I am very generous to
mhm,
myself. And I say that
yeah,
because I'm not always generous to myself with my money, but I'm very generous when it comes to travel. Like when I went to Antarctica, I spent $25,000. I was like, I didn't blink an eye. I saved for it for sure.
yeah,
It took 3 years to save that amount of money, but I didn't even blink an eye. I was like, yeah, it's totally worth it. And it was. I loved the experience. I still talk about it very often. So that's how you begin to spend money meaningfully because it aligns with your value. So I'll give you another example. I have friends and even family who very much value family, right?
mhm,
So for them, spending time with their family is valuable. That could mean that if they can outsource house cleaning, right? That's
mhm,
meaningful way of spending the money. If they can go on family vacation like once a year, twice a year, that's meaningful way of spending money. Or, some people want to have the best for their children, right? That's a meaningful way of spending. Like, yeah, private school might be expensive, but if that's what is meaningful to you because it aligns with your value or you feel like you want to be a provider for your family, that is your value, then it's meaningful. And I think when you can align your money with those meaning, with your values, you rarely ever regret spending money on those things.
yeah. One example for myself, because I'm definitely in like ramen slash salad days right now, and just trying to make whatever happen. Like there is a very like important band that was coming through,
Uh,
and I remember being on Instagram and I see like a little thing on their stories being like low tickets. I'm like, you know what? I've been working hard enough.
yeah.
I haven't had a day off in X amount of days. This is about like maybe 6 weeks before the show happened. I'm like,
Hmm.
I am buying a ticket. I took a look at the
Yeah.
number of that ticket, like, okay, this might be a stretch, but 6 weeks later, it comes along. It was probably like one of the best nights of my life this year.
Yeah.
And maybe last year, I probably wouldn't have earmarked, it might have been like a foolish decision. Like, okay, I probably could have used that $40 somewhere or like whatever, But as far as the joy that it
Yeah.
gave me, like I'm still cooking on that high. It's been
Yeah,
about like,
totally. I mean,
yeah,
that's what money is supposed to be for. It buys you meaningful things, and things could be an experience. It could be, like you say, positive outcome of how you think about things. Well, there's all kinds of things that money can buy, and that's what it's supposed to be for. Not some, like not dropping in a subscription to something that you never watch or read or something. Those are not meaningfully spent.
yeah. And another thing, like as I've gone on, because I've been doing this for a handful of years now and being on my own, like one thing I always tend to forget, and you mentioned this a little bit, where you feel like this is common knowledge, but maybe it's not so common. Like I don't know, as far as like financial stuff, because like that stuff isn't really like taught in schools anymore. Like it's more
Yeah,
from family that gets whatever knowledge gets, and there's
passed on. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and there's psychology to it too. Like you never know what like trauma
Hmm.
has come up to like
Yeah.
inform or deform like your views about money. But like what is has that surprised you, like as far as the people that you talk to? And like, because I tend to forget when I talk to people about like my story stuff, and I just feel like, of course, my hack or whatever else, like, man, people are going to see through me, yada yada yada. But then
Yeah.
as I work with people, like there's real things happening here, real realizations. But like I don't know, what's your experience with that, like as you've been talking with people about their money?
I think the biggest insights people have isn't so much that they weren't aware. It's more like they never came up on a conscious level. And even beyond that, is they never have language to
Hmm.
describe certain things. Because when you can codify a concept, right, it becomes more real. You can reference back to it because you can talk about it, even if you're just thinking about it, right? So I think that's what a lot of times people tell me, which is that yeah, what you said makes sense, right? And what just when I just describe how I spend money on travel because it aligns with that value, I can see that it makes sense to you. Like you can relate to that, right? A lot of people thought about those kinds of things, but never really understood why certain things resonate, but other things don't. They didn't know necessarily that it's tied to their values. And, values can be very different. Like I have three siblings and all their values are very different from them from mine.
Yeah.
They don't quite understand why I like to go to very remote parts of the earth to experience things. They go, like when I told them I'm going to Antarctica, my sister says, "What is there to see?" I'm like, you don't
Something I haven't
understand,
seen
and I
before.
can't explain it to you. Like it's just things like that where when you can actually put some language around what it is that you're thinking, it becomes more real and becomes something that you can reflect back on.
Hmm.
So that's what I found that a lot of when I talk to people, it's not so much that they didn't already know, it's more like they did consciously know and they didn't have a language around a lot of them this mindset around the psychology and the mindset around money.
Yeah, because one thing that in a previous conversation I had with you that kind of not threw me for a loop, but I was like, oh, okay. But the idea of like leveraging debt, because like in my um for a good chunk of my adult life, like being in evangelical spaces, like debt was extremely demonized, especially from like your Dave Ramsey's of the world,
Mm,
who of course like you want to pay cash for a lot of things, but I remember we were talking through something, and the way you were able to destigmatize it, and almost from an analytical data like point of view, being like, oh, if it's
mm,
this amount of time versus like X amount of money for X amount of time versus this or that the
yeah.
other, you can create some conclusions that's less emotional. And I'm like an
Yeah,
emotional
yeah.
guy, but like I appreciate when things like that can just be treated as data, and then you can kind of cloak it
Hmm.
around like meaning after that. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, like do you just kind of see like finances like as pure not pure data, because you do attribute like meaning to your experiences using money, but like I don't know, do you run into that a lot too when you talk to people about?
Um, yeah, I mean, yes. So my operating philosophy is that well, human are innately emotional. Like we're emotional being before we are rational being, right?
Mhm.
But if we let the emotion lead all our decision making, it's gonna lead us astray because there are certain things that we just more easily influence than others, right? So as much as I can, I try to help people see that you can turn that into more rational thinking, right? It's not always obvious how. Like we're talking about, I think you were talking about the whole ROI thing. I'm like, how do you know when to invest for your business and when you
Mhm.
know you don't invest, right? And it could be a very emotional. uh, conclusion. You go, wow, that just sounds good, and then you invest, right? Nothing wrong with that, but if you can make it more a rational thought of like, hey, so think about it in terms of the investment and then what you get in return and how long does it take to get that return, then you start making more rational decisions, which a lot of times for business decision making, it's more the it usually leads you down the right path more than an
Hmm.
emotional decision making for, whatever it may be. So I think a lot of it is about translating, how being an emotional being dealing with money, how can we translate that to something more rational so that we can make more rational decisions about, money in our lives?
Yeah, something that I've run into, and I'm sure a lot of other people have run into this as well, because if you're a solopreneur, like the streams get crossed as far as
Mm-hmm.
personal and business money, because the thing that I'm still kind of wrestling with is what we talked about a while ago, is
Yeah.
how easy it is for me to lose that perspective of ROI versus time of like length of time. And if
Mm-hmm.
anything, that should make things easier. And I do think it does, because like earlier today, I was like still racking my brain about, because more things happening, but more things to think about. But as you work with women solopreneurs, or just in general, like talking to friends and whatnot, like what's like your biggest tip to help people like separate this is personal and this is business? Because we all like want to grow our businesses and invest in things or save. Like, yeah, like what's like kind of like your first thing that you tell people?
Well, I mean, I think that's a harder question to answer in the sense of
Mhm.
like when you're a solopreneur, it kind of intertwine a lot, right? Even though
Yeah.
we should technically separate, like you should have a business checking account versus a personal one, and those kinds of things. And there are aspects of that that is important, but I think when we think about money, it's still one pot. Doesn't matter how we separate them, right? So I think that's a little harder questions to answer. But I
Yeah.
think what I try to do is say, if you know you're making a business decision, like try to be as rational as possible with it. And that's what a lot of what I write about in my newsletter, and sometimes what I post on LinkedIn is about. Like, how do you become more rational about your decisions when you make a business decision, because it should really be more rational than emotional, right?
Hmm.
It's harder to do that when it's your personal money, right? Like
Yeah.
something like value driven purchase, right? Is it more rational or emotional? I would argue that it's more emotional. As long as you kind of, like I said, it took me 3 years to save enough to go to Antarctica, and was totally worth it. But it did take that planning to make it happen, right? The spend itself might be more emotional than anything else, but there is a rational way of saying, I'm not going to go into debt for this. I'm going to plan for it. I'm going to save for it. It took me 3 years to save enough for the trip.
Hmm. And so what's the general protocol in your point of view, of when to save and when to leverage debt?
Um, I would say for business part, if you think the long term outcome, like I mean, nothing in life is set, right? You can make an assumption, it might not come true. But if you just be more rational about how you think about what is the ROI and what's the long term ROI, what is the ROI short term and what's the ROI long term? That in general is one way that you can think of to make a business decision more rational, just because you're now not saying, oh, but it feels good, or like, but it's going to help me with this, without any numbers backing it up, right?
Yeah.
So it's just being a little bit more intentional, thinking about that, is often helpful. um yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily answering your question per se.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very personalized. I feel like when I talk
Mhm.
to individual, it's a lot easier to kind of say, hey, these are the specifics. But to talk generally is a little bit harder. So
Yeah, for sure. I was just curious if you have like a general like rule of thumb, because it is personal. Like money is
yeah,
extremely personal.
yeah.
um Yeah.
I mean, the other thing too, a lot of times when I talk about, and I'm a firm believer in like the more you understand yourself, the more you understand the psychology of how you think and what your relationship already is with money, the easier it is to kind of say, oh, I don't want to do that because even though that's my immediate reaction, it's actually not good for me, right? So, for example, I talk a lot about there's more, four money archetypes, right? You could be money vigilant, like I'm sort of that, I'm like, oh, save every penny. It's like about upbringing. That's, being Asian family. That's what you do. You save money. You don't
Mm,
spend. You just save, right? Which comes with all kinds of problem as an adult, not being able to spend money. But then there's other people who are like money worshiper, right? People who actually feel like they're um the more money they have, the more successful they are. They really tie their identity to having money. And then there's people like money avoidance, people who just don't want to talk about money ever. They feel it's shameful to have money. These are the kind of people that, in solopreneur land tend to undercharge because they feel like they're not
mm,
worthy of the money that. So there are all those kinds of things. And the more you're familiar with them, the more you realize that, oh, this is my natural tendency, but it's not good for me. So I need to work actively against it, right? So
yeah.
for example, for the money avoidance, if you know that you naturally feel like, oh, you can't charge people for this amount of money because you feel like you're not worth it, then you need to stop. Just stop that conversation with yourself and say, it is not true. This is just what I grew up with. This is the script that's running in my head, but it's absolutely not true. And I just need to stick with what I'm worth and
Yeah.
go with that. Wait until the market tells you you're wrong. Until then, like charge exactly what you're worth. So
Yeah, that's definitely something I have personally had to, I'm still unlearning, but I had a pretty interesting thing happen to me last week where, because I'm not a designer. I can design-ish, like whatever you see on the screen right now is just me just kind of throwing shit together. And like,
that's cool though. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, I make things work for my. Here's the thing: I make things work for myself. Other people like, like just like, are you sure you want to pay me for this? But I had one of my good friends like, hey, I just saw my friend post this on Instagram. She's looking for a designer to do like a quick project for her. Like, is that something you can do? I'm like, maybe, like, just like, I would love some money. And so like I had like a general idea of what I could charge. And I felt weird even doing that. But as I'm sitting there on the phone with her talking through this project, and she's like, oh, and it's actually, I need it done by this Friday. And so that would have given me like exactly a week to do what she needed to
Yeah.
do. And here's me like I should ask for more. And like,
Yes.
yeah. And so like 2 years ago, I probably would have been like, oh, I just want to get the job. And I probably just would have
Yeah.
blurted
Yeah.
out like maybe the number I was thinking. But I said the number that felt like was
Good for you.
appropriate and I got the job done like 4 days early. So I'm just like, okay,
Nice.
like, I mean, like that's for something that's kind of like out of my wheelhouse. Like I feel a lot better talking about like my expertise and like
Hmm.
asking for certain amounts of money. But I think it's really hard if you're just starting and if you don't have like an entrepreneurial bone in your body, like you just want someone to pick you, like
Yeah.
and so you'll charge like whatever. Like did you struggle with that as you first started or yeah.
Um, I I treated that as experiment because
Mm,
that's sort of my background, data, and then before that in grad school, I was doing all kinds of experiments and stuff like that. So I kind of like you know go for really cheap, but then also like go for really expensive to try to figure out what actually makes sense, and let the market decide, right?
yeah.
When it's too expensive, the people are just going to say, no, this is too much. Like, which is what happened to me. I was like, oh, maybe I'll create this cohort. And I was like, charge an amount of money that nobody signed up for. I'm like, oh, okay, that's too much. you know, but that's data, right? That's data you
Yeah.
can use for the next iteration or whatnot. So,
Something I learned through through Alex Hermosi, I think. Like he's kind of like a bro business guy, but after a while I'm like, no, he just makes sense. I should listen to him. um, and he said like basically like once you get like a few yeses at a certain price point, like that should
Hmm.
tell you that you could
Yeah.
probably bump it by like 20-25% and kind of
Yeah.
see where things are. So
Yeah.
that was actually like really liberating for me because I had been charging for the workshop I've done, and I had maybe gotten like 15 yeses at it. But my conditioning, the whole like I feel
Yeah.
bad for providing,
Yep. Yep.
whatever. And so I think it's a good way to think about it, especially if you are a more emotional person about money or avoidant, because I'd probably tend to go that way. Like if you see it as a game or an
Yeah. Yeah.
experiment, like it really removes a lot of
It does.
decision making. I mean, I try to do that with my kids. Like, say if like there's like two things that they like has to happen as far as like chores or
Yeah.
whatever, or I'll get a die out and assign different outcomes. I'm like, all right, if we can't decide, we're gonna let this. Can't be mad about it. It's
That's a good way to,
God
that way
deciding.
it's like nobody's to blame, so to speak, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but like I do think it's a really good way to kind of move ahead and try to see where the real value is at without taking things anything personally or anything like that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
as someone who had a chip, like it's a very small chip on the shoulder. It used to be a lot bigger, but like it's
Mm.
been a lot easier to figure out. Okay, so we only have 5 minutes left to go. Well, I don't. Can you go slightly over? I just realized we didn't get into like the one thing that I was like amazed about. I found out about you last week is the fact
Yeah.
that you do like some mascot work because as you go into business, like you have to make some decisions of like how to make money before the other thing starts. So how'd you get into that?
Oh boy, how did I get into mascot work, character work? So a little over a year ago, actually even it started even before then, but my first opportunity came a little over a year ago. It was just fascinating to me. Like when you go to Disneyland, right? And Disneyland, of course, the main Disney World.
Hmm.
You take pictures with the characters or whatnot. You go, oh, that's so fun. But then when you know, my partner basically one time says, you love those characters. Have you ever thought about maybe? And I'm those one of those suckers for like I love experience. I love to do different things. I love to experience things. And that when he planted that seed, I go, oh, that's kind of fascinating, right?
Hmm.
But never thought much of it until like literally an opportunity landed on my lap, and I was like, oh, cool. I get to do this, right? And my initial reaction was just, I'm gonna try it. Because I try a lot of things in my life. I don't like everything I try, but I try a lot of different things. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. I don't do it again.
Yeah.
Right. So this is just another experiment. Like I'm going to try it. And if I don't like it, I'm not going to do it again. I actually really enjoyed it. There's something very liberating about putting on a costume and performing as somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I got started. I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I just kept exploring and the more opportunities came up. Um, And yeah, one day I won't say auditioned. I signed up to become the mascot for FIFA. The most recent FIFA that was just happened this
Hmm.
past summer, and I got the role. So so I was the one of the mascots. There were three. I was Maple the Moose on in the Bay Area for the Bay
Yeah.
Area games. And it was just like, wow. I never thought that would happen, but it was just so fascinating to me, the whole world. Like it opened up a lot of different parts of my brain of like, there's so much possibility. But then at the same time, I feel like it's exactly what I need because I feel like when I'm building my business, it's all just brain and computer
Yeah.
versus here, I get to be not thinking much and just acting and reacting and interacting with people. And it worked really well for me because like I feel like I get to balance what I'm doing with building my business, using my brain, talking to people about strategies and pricing and all that stuff. And here I am, one day a week or, one day every other week or something like that. I get to be a character and, completely different things that I do. And it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's,
I wouldn't take you as a performer, especially like learning all this stuff about you, like data, like finance, whatever. I mean, people are interesting and then they have multitudes and but I wouldn't have taken you as that at all. But FIFA would have been a lot of fun. Like it just seemed like so much fun. It was like a bright spot for like I forget how long it went, but like a month or so. But it just felt like a bright
yeah.
spot, like in culture, and being a part of that must have been like so cool, like to
It
interact
was
with people
cool.
like
I
that.
mean, I get to be on the pitch. I get to meet really interesting people.
Hmm.
I mean, the Bay Area games did not get they're not high profile enough games, so there was
Yeah,
not a lot of celebrities and anything like that. But I can imagine people who did it in New York or whatnot, they get to meet celebrities, because they're just
yeah,
walking around because you get backstage access, right? As a character performer, you get access, you meet people or whatnot. So it's kind of interesting to meet all those people, yet they don't know it's actually me. They
yeah.
think of me as the mascot. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I sent you that picture. So I used to work at Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
and I typically didn't work Saturday days, but one day I did, and like they would have story time for kids,
Uh-huh.
and they would have characters, so they like ship around like a box of like a wooden box of the costume that you're supposed to wear.
Oh,
Well, so I was in the back. Okay, so I used to work receiving, so I'd see every book come through, and I actually really loved that job. It was a lot of fun. But they're like, "Hey, Matt, do you want to be Clifford the dog today?"
oh, is that what the picture is from? I get it.
Yeah, yeah. So I did it for one day, but I actually had a lot of fun. But I accidentally like elbowed like a 5-year-old's head maybe like 3 times. But then you,
Oh,
you shrug it. You're like, ah,
you
that
can't see
happens.
very well, so
You
it's
really can't.
expected.
But now like whenever like so I recently have gone to Disneyland and I see like the characters, I'm like, it's just a person underneath there, but they're having
Yeah.
fun. I respect the work and
And like they
yeah,
bring the thing that struck me was how much joy they bring
yeah,
to the visitors that interact. And like I mean, I'm a big Winnie the Pooh fan, right? I still have Winnie the Pooh sitting on my couch. So every time I go to Disney, I'm like, I want to see Winnie the Pooh. Like I know in brain
yeah,
that is the person under there, but like when you see it, it's like, oh, it's Winnie the Pooh. It's my favorite character. It brings a lot of like very like childlike character out of me,
yeah,
and that's what I actually love about being a character work. Like you get to make people smile. Like what is there not to like about that? You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I'd do it. I'd do it again. Utah Jazz, call me or whatever, whoever, like NFL, whatever. I'll come do it. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. Like I love learning about you. I love learning about what you do. If any women hear this, how do they get a hold of you to start working with you?
The best way is actually find me on LinkedIn. I do post. So, give me a follow. I talk about solopreneurship, the struggles with it, and then, a lot of mindset around solopreneurship, a lot of mindset around money. So follow me on LinkedIn. Or, you can sign up for my newsletter. Again, you can find all that information on LinkedIn. So just my first name, Ceres, and then last name, Chua. So look me up, and that's probably the best way to connect with me. My website, I will bring you to I would say my website, but it's really not a website that you want to visit. It's just a website for people to sign up for the newsletter.
You know what?
So,
The newsletter is good enough. I subscribe. But I remember like that actually sparked the conversation, like one of your newsletters about like debt and things like that, where
oh yeah, yeah, I
um
remember that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's good shit, as I like to
Well, I'm glad you think so. I mean, it's it's when I get the responses like what you just said that, oh, it's so helpful. It helped me think through, or it helped me understand, X, Y, and Z or whatnot. That is what makes me smile. So
do you want
thank you
another
for saying
do you
that.
want another
And
ringing endorsement? Here, let me tell you what happened
yeah.
recently. You said something like on a LinkedIn post, like, "Oh yeah, the new newsletter," and I try to keep my inbox pretty clean. My actual inbox is bad, but my email inbox, I do a pretty good job of like, keeping clean. And I felt like I hadn't seen your newsletter in like 2 weeks, I was like,
Oh
oh my
no.
God. So I signed up again with like a new email address because I finally got like a Matthew at chapterscreative.com. And so I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I'll just sign up there. And it turned out that like I didn't for whatever reason, like I was still getting your other stuff, but it must have been slightly buried. I've
Aw.
seen worse inboxes, but yeah. So
I'm the same way. I subscribe to a lot of newsletter and I don't always read them, but I save the ones that I have read that I feel is good that I want to reference to, next time or whatnot. And sometimes I'm like, I know I saved this. I can't find it, but I
yeah.
know I saved it. So it's just a matter of finding it. So
See, yeah, like I know when I see yours, I get it. Like you're one of the few that I'm excited to see because it's a world that I'm still trying to
awesome.
understand. So, ringing endorsement right
Cool.
there. So,
Thank you.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you. I'll see you around.
Yes, yes. Thank you for having me. This is so fun. Just talk about, everything and anything. So, yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.